I want to welcome everyone out there who's joining us by podcast or YouTube this morning. You are in for a treat. Carla, our Director of Youth Ministries, is preaching this morning, and she has a sermon that is both uplifting as well as will make you think and make you consider just why forgiveness is so important.
Thank you. Our scripture text this morning comes from the Gospel of John, the 8th chapter, verses 1 through 11. Jesus went across to the Mount of Olives, but he was soon back in the temple again. Swarms of people came to him, and he sat down, and he taught them. Jesus bent down, and he wrote with his finger in the dirt. They kept at him, badgering him. He straightened up and he said, "The sinless one among you, you go first. Throw the stone." Bending down again, he wrote some more in the dirt. Hearing that, they walked away, one after another, beginning with the oldest. The woman was left alone. Jesus stood up and spoke to her. "Woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you?" "No one, Master." "Neither do I," said Jesus. "Go on your way. From now on, don't sin." When you least expect it, God rocks your world. But really, this sermon could have been called, "When you least expect it, Steve announces that you're preaching and you really weren't going to." See, several weeks ago, Justin had sent me an email inviting me to be a part of this sermon series, and usually I jump right on the chance to preach because it's a great way for me to be a part of this part of CUC's ministry. I enjoy it. It's a part of my pastoral call that I don't get to be involved in very often, and I like it. But I've had a lot going on in my life, and I wasn't sure I'd be in town or I'd be available, and wasn't sure the timing would be quite right. So I thought about it, and I said, well, what's the sermon series about? It's before everything had been launched. And so Justin told me it was about these unexpected ways that God acts in your life, the surprises. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. It's a great idea. You guys are going to have an awesome time preaching about that. Yeah, because I got to say, I have not been a fan of the ways that God has surprised me lately. And I'm not sure that I really should be preaching about that. I'm not sure I have anything to offer. And usually that means I just need to bow out. So thanks, but I'm not sure. But before I close the door, because like I said, I really thought I should probably give it a good effort, I said, well, show me what you guys are kind of thinking about. So Justin gave me the list of the ideas, and I said, oh, yeah, no. Let me pray about that. Oh, no. Yeah. Nope, nothing on that list for me. Well, maybe there's something else that I'm just not thinking about. Nope, not going to happen. So I waited until that first Sunday. Steve was up here, and he was all excited. Yeah, we got a new sermon series. I thought, yeah, Steve, go preach that sermon series. It's going to be great. And he was great. And he talked about it, he set it up, he had that whole Facebook, got anything good for me. You guys had great things to share with him. And with Justin, thank you for that. And so he was setting it up, and he said, yeah, it's going to be a great series, and I'm going to preach, and Justin's going to preach, and I'm in the back with the youth, doing what I do, looking at them, making sure my boys aren't wrestling. because they do a lot, and the kids aren't, cuddling back there, and just doing my youth minister stuff. And then you probably noticed, but it looks like the kids don't pay any attention, right? It looks like it. And then he says, yeah, and Carla's going to preach, and and they all look right at me. They paid attention. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to preach, because they're all looking at me, and Steve said it, and it's here in church, so it's got to happen. Pinned in a corner, and I can't say no. And I thought, oh, man. So here I am. Because right after that, I thought, now, I still don't like anything on that list. I'm still not sure I have anything to say. And then I hear her and I see her, this woman. Here she is. This woman caught in this story. This weird little story that we reference in contemporary society. We talk about throwing stones. We reference it, but we kind of touch on it and we leave. The story that's kind of tucked in, but we don't explore it. And I hear her and I see her and she calls to me and I know I'm stuck. It's mine to tell. Steve said it. The kids have looked at me. I've smiled and nodded. So here we go. You'd think I'd be comforted because now I have my text, but I'm not. Because I'm not sure I really like her story very much. But here we go. So, here in Colorado, we think we know a lot about getting stoned. You knew it was coming. You knew I had to go there. I work with teenagers, and it's right there in the text, right? You drive down Broadway, it's all over, it's everywhere. We talk about it, we laugh about it, we do this. This text, of course, takes us in a very different direction. Justin made the point, of course, if this woman had been stoned, the whole thing might have been a lot less dramatic, might not hurt so bad. But we don't know that to have been a part of the story. So, we are here with this story. We'd like to think, of course, that this ancient form of capital punishment was just for that day, and it didn't exist ever again. And yet we read the papers and we watch the news and we know that, in fact, this form of capital punishment exists today in other parts of the world. Perhaps we just flip right through that, or we turn that page real quick and we like to pretend that it doesn't happen in contemporary society around our world. That there aren't people who face their killers with rocks in their hands for crimes no more dangerous than adultery. However, that would be foolish, because it does. And we do know that, because we are educated folks, aren't we? But this is a story about her. Or is it? Because really, this is not about her getting stoned, but really it's a test about what Jesus knows about getting stoned. It's really a quiz, if you will, because this is the stage. Here's Jesus, and he's out there and he's teaching. Imagine his charisma. Imagine the power he must have had to draw a crowd. What was it about him? What was it? he started talking, and people were drawn to him. And the religious leaders, they couldn't get anybody through the doors of their place. They were mad. They were jealous. They were threatened. And so they decided they would test him. They wanted to see what he knew about the law. And so they had a pop quiz at this woman's expense. When you least expect it, your life depends on a pop quiz with one question. And so it was. So they brought her in, and they asked him. See, this is the deal. Good thing he knows the law. Because the law does say, in fact, that adultery is punishable by stoning to death. Except not just her, but the gentleman who was also involved, wherever he might have been. We don't know. Maybe he was running as far as he could. Maybe he was hiding. Maybe he didn't exist because it didn't happen. We don't know. He's not mentioned, lucky guy. We don't know. But that's how the law reads. There needs to be two witnesses. It was just her. There she is. One of the versions says she was caught red-handed. I think that's funny. But there she is, red-handed, in adultery. And the quiz to Jesus is, what do you do? Do you break the law? Do you know the law? So they test his knowledge of stoning. Here she is, bent down, crouched, afraid. And here's Jesus. What is he doing? He's playing in the sand. What? When you least expect it, the Savior of the world is playing in the sand. What? What's he doing? One of the sources I read, they thought maybe he was writing little messages to her in the sand, like, I love you. You're forgiven. Little patterns. I thought that was cute. I'm not sure I buy it, but I thought it was cute. Maybe like, run fast to the right. I'm going to throw a rock to the left. You go to the right. We don't know what he was doing in the sand. Maybe he was just brushing it from side to side. Little Zen garden. We don't know what he was doing, but it certainly wouldn't have been what you would expect. He's Jesus, and he's playing in the sand. And here she is, afraid. It's palpable, isn't it? You expect her to be sweating, her knees weak. Maybe her breathing is so deafening she can't hear the crowd around her. Are they chuckling? Are they laughing at her, at him, at the whole situation? Are they salivating? Are they bloodthirsty? Just waiting to trap him and kill her? Is it silent? Just waiting for his word? For the first stone to hit her? And maybe mercifully hit her in the head, knock her out? We don't know. Does she vomit? Is she thinking about her children? Is she thinking about her past or her future? What's it like to be there in that place drugged down by whatever it is. See, she's not that person who's reaching for the hem of his garment. We heard about that last week, right? That's not her. She's not throwing herself at him saying, Jesus, save me. Now, it's possible that she didn't know about him. He didn't have that halo behind him that we see in the pictures. He didn't wear that all the time. I think when he was out with the folks, he took that off. Because it's a little gaudy, right? His big sweater with the J that his mom knit for him, he probably took that off sometimes. It got hot over there. So maybe she didn't get that this was the big J. This was Jesus. Maybe she didn't quite catch that. But she wasn't doing that. She didn't cower behind him saying, ha ha, I've got Jesus. Throw your rocks. He's going to save me. She didn't do that. She was down. Her eyes probably never lifted up. Did she have no faith? We don't know. We don't know. Or do we? Or do we? But we do know that eventually Jesus looks at them and he speaks. He gets out of the sand, whatever he's doing. Thank goodness, because this could have gone on for a long time and been really awkward. He gets out of the sand and he says to her, well, he says to them first, hey, you all, which one of you is without sin? Okay, throw that rock. Well, then they get it. He knows. None of them. And then they go. No, we don't know. Did they just drop their rocks? Did they throw them in disgust? Did they stuff them in their pockets for later and get her the next day? Did they curse him as they left? Did they curse her? Did they hang their heads? However, the oldest left first and then the younger, and they left. And she was so intent that he had to draw attention and speak first. Woman. Perhaps she didn't know this, that halo and the sweater, you know. Maybe she thought that he was going to just do her in himself. Maybe Jesus seemed to her to be just as much of a threat as those other guys. They didn't judge you. They didn't condemn you. Neither do I. And wouldn't it be great if that was the end of the sermon? Woohoo! Yay! That's it. We're done. You get out early. I'm done. Everybody's happy. She's happy. Jesus is happy. The other guys with the rocks, they're not happy, but they're the bad guys anyway. The bad guys shouldn't be happy. That's okay. And then you can have the music, and the curtain goes down, and it's good. Thus ends the day. Whew. But it's not like that. See, the horse with the cowboy doesn't come in and sweep her off her feet. Doesn't end like that. There's this little bitty verse. Jesus can't leave it alone. He makes it hard for me and makes me mad because he adds this little bit that I can't ignore. This little last piece. Go and sin no more is how most of us remember it. Go from here and be without sin. That word, I've said it so many times, and I know I'm here at CUC. We changed the way people see God. That means that we don't use that word. Ugh. Sin. Yuck. I don't want to preach that sermon. You don't want to hear that sermon, right? You get the willies? Do you get uncomfortable? Do you shift? Do you think, oh, we don't like that word? That word carries baggage, 3 little bitty letters, and they're so heavy. Because we put so much into them. Memories, connections, fears, disappointments, guilt, shame. We feel transparent. We feel vulnerable. We feel weak. We feel like we want to vomit too. All because of a little bitty word that we might not really understand. But in order to be set free like Jesus did and have that curtain go down and have the cowboy and the whole thing, we have to understand what ties us down. We have to understand what it feels like to be ready to be stoned. Not to be stoned, kids, no, but to be ready, to be in that position, to wait for it, to wait for those rocks. To know that. I got to a new place in my life I didn't know existed. Some of you might know this place. I got to go to Super Target on a Saturday afternoon without kids. I didn't know the bliss that comes from walking up and down the aisles at Target and looking at things with no one talking to me. It's amazing. I even went down the automotive aisle. I didn't need anything. It's crazy. I went down to the books. Sent to Soar, sold out, just so you know. Oprah's book, Oprah, the mothership of everything. She's got a book out. Apparently everyone else in the world knows about it. I open it. Just 1 page I read. Well, 2, because I turned it. But 1 page about her shame of being a victim of sexual abuse as a child. She spoke on behalf of millions of men and women just like her. I turned from that book and looked at magazines, and there was an article by a quarterback of another team. There are other teams, Bronco fans. There's another quarterback, Russell Wilson, who talked about being a bully as a child and his shame and his guilt for being a bully. 2 sides of that same prison, that prison that locks people in, of shame. Maybe that's what held that woman down, kept her eyes down, kept her locked in that spot. We know that. We're there sometimes. All that from just a moment at Target. Not to mention the day in and day out, times that we might resonate with that feeling. Losing a job, standing in a line at Target and having that 12-year-old clerk, because you know they're all 12, they're all standing there and you're there and they humiliate that person up front saying, Sir, your card says it's declined. It's declined. There's no money, insufficient funds. And they look down and they have nothing. Homes that have been foreclosed upon. Cars that are repossessed. relationships that fall apart. Tests that come back with scores that are not good, and everybody's sharing what good grades they got. ACTs that are studied for months, and yet are not yet good enough to get into that school that everyone in the family has gone to. Scholarships that are applied for and not gotten. Parts that are auditioned for and yet not achieved. Hopes and dreams that are not fulfilled. Disappointments. Promotions that elude you. We know that. We feel that. And we put blocks and bricks and walls and surround ourselves. They create barricades. So like that woman, we become frozen. That's a sermon we don't want to hear because it doesn't feel good. But just like for her, Jesus reaches out and he tells us. He doesn't condemn us. He loves us. He offers for us an opportunity to walk, to go from this place, because it's really not an ending. It's really a beginning. It's really a start to a new life. Because when we walk with him, when we're close to him, we walk with him together. Not that it's going to be easy. Not that the credit card won't get declined sometimes, because it will. He doesn't put money in our accounts. But what he does do is he offers us that opportunity. He offers us that chance to feel connected and redeemed and renewed. To not feel alone and abandoned, isolated and rejected. Feel it. It's for you. It's for me. It's for all of us. It was for her. But it's for all of us. Because when we make that choice to let the stones down and not turn on each other, our hands are free to lift each other up and show his mercy and to show his love one to another and be the community that he calls us to be. To embrace each other and to embrace him. The forgiveness that he offers this day and every day. When we least expect it, God rocks our world with radical forgiveness and opportunities to forgive each other, certainly, and ourselves. Let go of the shame, disappointment, fear. Let go of them. And hold on to the love and forgiveness that he offers. I invite you to pray with me. God of surprises we want, and God of surprises we don't. God, we know that you are with us, even when we don't want you to be with us, even when we're afraid of you, and even when we're mad at you, and even when we don't understand you. Help us. Help us to see you, to move away the shame and the disappointment and the fear and the nervousness. Because sometimes it gets really comfortable to know those things and to know that we could just be like that forever. Help us to be brave and to take that first step with you. And then take that second step and the third, and to walk with you into a new life, a life of forgiveness, a life of openness, a life of grace, a life where our hands are open and the rocks have fallen down. Our hands are open to possibilities. Our hands are open to receive the love that is given to us. Our hands are open to help those around us. Our hands are open to serve you. And when we are tempted to go back and wrap ourselves in the blanket of shame and fear and disappointment and self-pity, help us to receive those around us who challenge us to turn away and instead look at your light and your love and be reconnected and renewed. Your way is not easy, but your ways are good. Help us to find our way with you. We come to you this day as unique individuals, lifting our many voices into one, praying the prayer you taught us when praying to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. But deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.